medical equipment manufacturing company in Lakewood, lauded for saving millions of lives with its technology, is now accused of risking other people's lives in the process. That's according to a recent lawsuit.
We're talking about the Terumo BCT facility at Sim Street and Collins Avenue in Lakewood. Lawsuits from several neighbors claim they got sick with cancer because of Terumo's ethylene oxide emissions. CBS News Colorado investigator Katie Weiss unpacking this really complex issue tonight.
So, Katie, is there an elevated cancer risk in that community?
Yes, the EPA and the state health department say there is a higher likelihood for someone living in the community to develop cancer, and that risk can increase the longer someone lives there and the more hours that they're exposed to that ethylene oxide. And also, children may be more susceptible. Now, we also found there's a lower life expectancy for people living near the facility than the state average. I spoke with one man who says he used to ride his bike by this facility every day as a child, but now he can barely walk.
This is the Terumo Blood Cell Technologies facility in Lakewood. While it's had different owners over the decades, the factory has been up and running, manufacturing and sterilizing medical equipment for more than 40 years. The facility makes life-saving blood donation supplies and other medical tech. And right now, the only FDA-approved way to sterilize many medical supplies is by using a gas known as ethylene oxide, a gas the EPA has designated as carcinogenic.
I feel like it's gotten a lot worse.
Blake Darnell grew up near the facility. As a kid in the 90s and early 2000s, he spent his afternoons biking next to the plant. That all changed in 2009 when he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at 18.
I just had this pain shooting through my left leg. By the time I got home from work, I could barely walk. So my dad had to carry me out to the car and we went to the hospital, and I went in and they drew blood and said you have necrotizing fasciitis and ALL, cancer.
ALL is a cancer of bone marrow. Darnell spent years in the hospital and eventually his leg was amputated. After more than a decade of fighting, Darnell's bones are still deteriorating and he's in constant pain.
There's just no cartilage in my bones, so they just grind together, just bone on bone, just disintegrating and chipping. I got this tape that kind of helps. Feels like it holds the bones kind of from moving around, but it doesn't help a whole lot.
He said he was surprised in 2018 when he saw information online about the potential hazards of ethylene oxide, or ETO. Now he is one of at least a dozen people suing Terumo BCT, claiming the facility's ETO emissions caused their cancer.
I just know if there was signs when I went there that said at risk of getting cancer, you ride your bike here, I wouldn't not ride my bike there.
The EPA's regulations on ETO haven't changed since the 1990s. In 2018, the EPA released a study indicating ETO emissions may be much more dangerous than previously thought. After that study, Terumo implemented new controls and nearly cut its ETO emissions in half. But even after those new controls were put in place, the EPA still found an elevated cancer risk last year for people living near Terumo. EPA records show the state average lifetime cancer risk is 25 people in a million expected to get cancer. But the EPA says people living near the facility have a lifetime risk of 100 in a million. And the people living closest to the facility have a risk level of 600 in a million. The state health department studied the cancer rates in that area in 2018 and found 226 people had cancer there, slightly higher than the expected number of 197. But the health department concluded those higher rates were not statistically significant and that many factors can increase someone's chances of having cancer, like lifestyle and genetic factors.
It's concerning.
Community members like Marianne Ortiz, who is the president of her neighborhood association, Applewood Valley, want to see more steps taken to ensure she and her neighbors are safe.
We want Terumo to be a good neighbor and to be transparent about any type of ETO that's in the air. We are hoping that they will help us to acquire monitors that will provide that transparency to the community.
As someone who works from home, she's worried about being exposed to the ETO emissions 24 hours a day.
There are quite a few members of the community that have experienced cancer.
While Terumo declined multiple requests for an on-camera interview, a spokesperson tells us, quote, "We are confident our operations are not harming residents near our Lakewood facility." and emphasized the EPA studies have not proven the facility's emissions have caused any cancer diagnoses, writing, quote, "We are not aware of any scientific study that suggests a link between the very low level of exposure to ETO that anyone in our neighborhood may have been exposed to from our facility and cancer or any other disease." But Terumo says it is planning to install a more sophisticated system this summer that will reduce its ETO emissions by another 70%. And while that takes place, the EPA is evaluating possible regulation changes to lower allowed ETO emissions.
I believe the EPA has been behind the ball on this for a very long time.
Kurt Zahner is representing Darnell in his lawsuit.
The EPA, like all government, moves very slowly. And so they have had intentions to regulate ETO, ethylene oxide, but they haven't moved fast enough. And they're finally recognizing that. And they've now fast-tracked ethylene oxide as a toxin. But the problem is a lot of the damage has been done.
He says recent lawsuits against other medical sterilization facilities emitting ETO in other states have been successful.
It's very frustrating to see that injured people need lawyers like myself to affect change, that corporations aren't taking responsibility.
Darnell hopes his lawsuit will inspire change for Lakewood.
So the nice kid doesn't have to go through the hell that I've gone through. Hopefully save the nice kid.
Now, Terumo also tells us in a written statement that they cannot comment on specifics to that lawsuit, but they tell me they continue to meet and exceed strict state and federal standards to protect public health. Michael, Karen?
Now, Katie, are there any other plans in the works for alternative methods to sterilizing medical supplies?
Yes, I've spoken with some industry experts, and I'm told that the FDA is looking at some other options. But right now, ETO is the most efficient and effective method because you can sterilize it in large quantities, and when the supplies are already boxed up and ready to ship, it could be at least another 5 years before any other method is approved. And in the meantime, industry leaders are telling me they think their time is best spent creating ways to use ETO with less emissions. Guys?
Wow. All right. So much. I know you'll stay on top of this one, Katie.
You got it.
Yeah, thank you.